it's so gross. There are so many fluids in this movie that I don't even want to know where they came from. The great Katie Walsh is back to help me understand the incredibly strange movie, Funny Pages. This is a really weird movie. This is definitely not for everyone, but I'm glad that you are here to walk through it with me. What happens?
What would it take for a drawing lesson, honestly? You consider yourself a cartoonist, right? I'd pay you. How much?
I loved this movie.
Did you? Okay, great.
It is the debut of Owen Kline, who we should just say is the son of Kevin Kline and Phoebe Cates.
Yep.
And he came up working for the Safdie brothers. So it has a lot of Safdie brothers energy. They are producers on the film. It is a coming of age story starring Daniel Zolghadri. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. And he's the kid from 8th grade, I think, with the chicken nuggets. Remember him?
Yes.
I think this is a great lead performance from him. It's a coming of age story about this kid who loses his teacher. He's an aspiring comic. He's like this young artist who's like casting off his middle class comforts and seeking out a gritty, starving artist life. And he's, 17 or something like that. And he moves out of his parents' house and into this horrible apartment. And he's finds this guy who he's obsessed with, making him his mentor because he used to work at Image Comics. And the guy who is his would-be mentor is played by Maher, who you might recognize from Our Flag Means Death. And it's New York character actor central. Mm-hmm. And this film it's a classic coming of age story, but it is hilariously gross, absurd, ridiculous, wildly inappropriate at times. I was just laughing so hard and knowing that it was just completely off the wall. But yeah, there's some really, it's gross out humor, coming of age story, and then also kind of dashes of American splendor, or Crumb, because he is a comic artist in the vein of, subversive Mad Magazine, dirty comics kind of thing. It's so silly and weird, but I really loved it.
And at its core, it's about lonely, isolated people trying to connect with each other.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, once you get past it's so gross. There are so many fluids in this movie that I don't even want to know where they came from. It's gross at times.
It's very gross.
I mean, and when you say he lives in an apartment, that's a really
it's not an apartment
description for the place that he ends up moving out. It's not even. I don't want to say what it is.
As soon as he walked in, I was like, no, don't live there. And I think that I think part of what makes this movie funny is the things that are happening are so outlandish and repulsive and absurd and ridiculous, but then his reaction is always just kind of deadpan, this is normal. And so I think it's that kind of juxtaposition between his reactions to things and how outlandishly bad the things are that was the humor for me. And those little moments where he kind of realizes oh no, this is really bad, or I have to leave, or whatever, those are the moments they're just a very few moments of clarity. And it's weird because the guy, the Matthew Maher character, he's a character named Wallace. He's kind of a weird, edgy guy. He's got some mental health issues. He's troubled, but he becomes the voice of reason in the film, where you're wait, he's the only one making any sense here.
There's a lot of situations here where we know that the kid is in a really weird scene. We know how wrong and bad things are, and he can't see it because he has these delusions of maturity and grandeur in a way that kind of reminded me of Rushmore. There's a lot of Max Fisher to this kid in that
he's kind of arrogant.
Totally. He's got that I wrote a hit play energy. A lot of the time in here, he's trying so hard to be grown up and he's not. And the way he treats his parents, played by Josh Pais and Maria Dizzia, who are both so great in this, they react. I felt them. I'm yes, they're right. If I'd seen this a long time ago, I'd be oh, the kid, of course, he's independent. He wants to be on his own. And now I'm the 50-year-old mom going, who is this freak? Yes. It is truly, truly independent. Although, as you mentioned, who Owen Kline's parents are, he also was the younger brother in The Squid and the Whale.
Right.
And so, yes, he has a lot of connections, but the vibe of this is so gritty and so intimate and feels so low budget in a way that's really exciting and is very, very Josh and Benny Safdie. You can feel that influence in like the look of it. There's like a texture to it.
They shot on super 16 millimeter.
Yeah. And that shows it feels of a different time. It feels of like the birth of independent film in the daring, in the chances that it takes, in its willingness to offend and go to places that are both bizarre and oddly touching.
Yes, yes. It does feel like early independent cinema. It's shot on Super 16 by Sean Price Williams and Hunter Zimny. And just the collection of New York character actors was a joy to watch. I'm like, these are like the people who God knows where they found them.
And just like everything about the clothing, like the costume design and the production design, like it's very specific and really, really thought out to, it's not condescending, but you feel the pathetic nature of everybody and everything here. And I think they approach it in an affectionate way. There is kindness for these oddballs, but this film is really not for everybody.
Yeah, it's a weird one, but I found it very funny. And if you're into that kind of energy and vibe, it'll be very enjoyable.
Okay, so what's your number then?
I'm giving it a 7.5.
Okay, I'm going to say 7. So our number is somewhere in this mid 7 range.